Welcome to Supernatural Circumstances, the podcast where we take you down the rabbit hole into the fantastic world of the strange, the paranormal, and the unknown. I'm Morgan Knudsen.
And I'm Mike Browne, that guy there. It's time to dim the lights and settle in. Come along with us on this week's adventure. Greg Bakun.
Yes, and for those who don't know him, he is the host of Ghostbox Radio,
Which you've been on before.
which I've been on twice before, and is an amazing experiencer of this, which is not super common when it comes to people hosting shows and things like that. You usually either get one or the other, but
Right.
he has some incredible stuff going on.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy, and I'm looking forward to our conversation with him. So let's just get this show on the road.
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody, to Supernatural Circumstances podcast, the podcast for the curious, and I'm Morgan Knudsen. That's Mike Browne.
It is, yeah.
And every day, in fact, every day. And we are the paranormal podcast without the bullshit. So if you would like to join us on iHeartRadio or Spotify or Apple or any of these amazing places that you get podcasts, then you'll get the extended edition of this episode. And we would just love to have you. But Greg Bakun, we have you on the show today, and we are so glad that you're here because we had, first of all, such a fantastic discussion on your show that I really wanted to keep this going. So I'm so glad that you were able to join us today.
It's great to be here. And yeah, it was interesting when we did my show because there was a moment that I think we changed gears in our conversation. Like you could really feel the change of, oh, wow, we are really on the same page about some stuff here. And it was really exciting to talk about it because it's almost like you don't always get to talk to people about stuff, you know? So yeah, that was great.
So for those of us who weren't there, can you guys sort of encapsulate a little bit of what the conversation was and how you got into it?
Yeah, sure. It started out, I think, just as an interview, and we just decided to take a different turn, I think, when we realized that some of the more positive aspects of this subject matter are not discussed and talked about, and that connection with all that is, this connection with things that we refer to as cryptids and things like that. And Greg, why don't you talk about it a little bit?
There was a point during our conversation that we just started talking about energy and intention, which when it comes to really anything, I always struggle with what I want to call this, but Bigfoot, let's say Bigfoot. And so there came a point that I've had experiences that is meeting up with and seeing an actual Bigfoot and being touched by one. And Morgan was talking about her experiences, and we realized that we were approaching it the same way. And that was refreshing because I don't want to take away from anyone who thinks that Bigfoot is some kind of animal in the forest. I think everyone has the right to have their own opinion on stuff. But, you know, I feel like what I've experienced is actually something that makes me really a strong believer in what I'm saying. You know, it's not like I theorize this. I feel like I've seen it, and Morgan had seen it, and she experienced it. So there felt like there was that great connection of something that you don't really get to talk to a whole lot of people about.
We've talked about this kind of thing on this show numerous times. So are we talking about things like the Philip experiment, where it comes from the consciousness of the person who is having the experience?
I feel like that part of it could. I think what was really important about every experience that I've had and using the desire of intention, I guess, is that it's been a group experiment. You know, it's never just been myself seeing someone. And the first one that we had, there was 4 of us who saw the same thing at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that really changes the dynamic of it. I hate to talk about things and people are like, did you record it? No. Did anyone else there? No. You know, it's like nice to be able to have something that a lot of people took part in so that there is more to it. And that's really what I feel like that intention and maybe that whole energy growth from multiple people might be what kind of spurs it all on, perhaps.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great insight. And like you were saying, and we talked about before, was that this nature of intention and how you're approaching these sites to be able to witness these different creatures, whether it be Sasquatch or Dogman or whichever. And we've mentioned it before, where I firmly believe it's the energy that you bring to the space. It's what you bring with you. It's not a matter of going out and hunting something. It's really what you bring with you. So, Greg, I want to get into this and talk about some of your stories, because you've got an incredible one from Kentucky and then another one from Indiana, and a couple more after that. And I think this is so cool. So let's set the stage a little bit, because Kentucky is a really interesting location. We had recently Brandon Elvis on talking about the Kentucky Triangle and very unique experiences, everything from UFOs to Sasquatch, all sorts of interesting things going on. So what did you experience? Let's talk about that.
We have a couple friends that are also mutual friends to Brandon. They've been on actually Haunted Discoveries, Denise and Ernie Pack. And they live in what they had found out through local lore. And I say it this way because they didn't dub it this way themselves. They found people call their house, the Ditto House, as the most haunted house in Kentucky. My friend Shar and I have been friends with them for a while, and we went down to go visit. And what Ernie and Denise had said was that we're going to do one night of looking for Sasquatch. And I've never done anything like that before. To be perfectly honest, that didn't seem to be really in my wheelhouse, because I didn't want to be in the middle of the woods being like attacked by ticks and stuff like that. I was just like, no, whatever. But I'd much rather look at spirits and look at ghosts. And we're going to Fort Duffield in West Point, Kentucky, which is about 6 blocks from the Ditto House, and that Denise and Ernie do the paranormal events for Duffield. And Duffield's this earthen fort that was used in the Civil War. So the walls were made up from the earth, and they went up about as high as 17 feet. And now, because of erosion and whatnot, they're down to about 12. I never saw any battle, but it was there. And now, butted right up to it is Fort Knox. So just to give a little bit of idea of where we are here. So we go down to Ditto House and we stay there, and Char's with her wife and I'm there, and Char and I are just sitting in the living room of the Ditto House. I think this is important to the story. We're sitting there, and this, what I thought was like a fly, some kind of bug, starts flying towards us. And of course, my intention is let's kill it. I've learned something since then, because as it's flying near us, I could see a body attached to the wings. I can see a head. I can see a human form with wings flying at it. Char is seeing this, because I'm literally like, with my hands, okay, come to Papa. And I'm like, ooh, that's an elemental. I've never seen an elemental. I believe that's an elemental. You're going to kill that? and then you're going to be in trouble afterward. That's not a good thing to do. And this thing just silently just flies between Char and I and just disappears. And all 4 of us in the room are just like, whoa. So that was one of the first nights we were there. The second night, then we go up to Duffield. And Duffield, the way the layout of Fort Duffield is, you come in and then you need to go up this rather steep hill with your car. And when you get to the top, Fort Duffield is to the right, and kind of like a horseshoe shape, there's a memorial to the left. But that's where you park. And we decided, instead of going to Duffield first, that we're going to go over to the memorial, just kind of check it out. Once again, we're there just to see what's going on, maybe do some paranormal investigating, like spirits. And we get over to the other side where the memorial is, and we're walking around and stuff, and we go down the decline, down the hill, and we maybe get to 25 yards or something. I mean, space is kind of not my thing. But we get to an area, and Denise is like, feel this tree. I mean, it's like, what an odd thing to say. And you put your hand up to it, and the thing is just vibrating with energy. Just really just like that's crazy. All of a sudden, I start feeling from my feet going up like I'm being scanned. Like I am being scanned. And I could see Shar and Denise, they're kind of like have a strange sort of thing going on with them. I'm like, I feel like that energy is like I'm being scanned, and Denise is like, absolutely, I'm feeling that too. And we're just like, what is happening here? And it just gets kind of strange. We go back up the hill, and we're just kind of hanging around up there, not really sure what even to do, what's going on. This is like very energetic. It feels like it's a full moon because I remember a lot of moonlight, especially further down the ravine. And we start seeing more lights, like what I would consider elementals. Now, there were lightning bugs out there. Don't get me wrong. But they're very erratic. They're bugs. They're flying around and stuff. Some of these were very purposeful in their flight, and they were purple and blue and just kind of flying around and whatnot. And so we're just standing around. We don't even know what's going on. It's just weird. And we're back up at the top of the hill looking back downwards. There's 4 of us. I don't know what happened to Shar's wife. And I think there's a good story to be told with that, and I'll briefly get to that in a second because she's off with her night vision goggles looking somewhere else. We're looking down the hill, and all of a sudden, out of the tree line comes this massive Bigfoot. He just steps out. How I remember him is he is white-haired, silver, and I remember purple highlights because I feel like that's the moon playing on it. I mean, my mind was very majestic, but the overriding remembrance of this is all 4 of us at the same time just put up our arm and we point down to the bottom of the hill. We don't say anything. We just at the same time, we're not even looking at each other. All I know is I saw 3 other arms. And it was just like, oh my gosh. So Denise, she has no fear. So she's just like, this creature, whatever it is, walks back into the woods and she just darts, runs after it.
Girl after my own heart.
Right, exactly. And I decided, and the rest of us started running too, because I thought, you know what? What we just experienced is absolutely phenomenal. Whatever happens next. But boy, let's do it. Let's go for it. And so we all ran, which is, I think, for me, very comical. But we're all running down this hill, and we get to the bottom where it was, and there's nothing around. We're just like, oh my gosh. And we couldn't believe it. And Denise and Ernie, they walk back up, and I'm walking up with Shar. And like I said, it's this area that just has some trees, but it's really open. And on either side, there's forestry. And so we're walking back up, and we can hear something mimicking our steps on the other side of the trees. We would stop, it would stop. We would start up again, it would start up again. And that's not great. It's scary, to be perfectly honest. Even if they don't mean any harm, they're just checking us out. It's not great when you're just already like, I don't know what's happening here. We get to the top of this hill, and we start to get this scent, this really overriding scent of something very furry, very hairy, that, let's just put it this way, doesn't take very good care of itself when it comes to cleaning. It's very strong, very pungent, very nasty. But my first instinct, because Shar's wife was like, oh, that's horrible smell and whatnot. And it's just like, it is, but I think there needs to be a level of respect, because I don't think you have to be Columbo to figure out what that is after already experiencing that stuff. And I come from an area of like, whatever this stuff is, you have to respect it. That was actually kind of annoying to me. And I guess the thing about her with her night vision goggles, I love equipment as much as the next person, but sometimes you just have to not use it and just enjoy the moment. The whole night she was just like with her goggles, like, I'm trying to find stuff. And we were the ones without it, and clear as day, we saw it, 4 of us. Later, we went to Duffield itself. We had some experiences, but it's around 2 a.m. We're just sitting up in a deck area that they created, and there was this guttural yell. It wasn't scary, but you knew that wasn't of any animal, that you could be like, oh, that's a goat or bear or whatever else. It's just like, I don't know what that is. But to me, it felt like it was something saying, go home, quite frankly. And we did. That was night number 1.
It's really incredible. And it reminds me so much of the indigenous lore that you hear from these areas, because like I've got, I mean, Mike, we've talked to Alicia, like the friends here, that talk about these things all the time, and things like the little people, things like Sasquatch,
Yes.
things like, and it's so easy for us to just be like, oh no, it was a bug, or it was this, or it was that. And it's like, when you get into the realm of this stuff, I really believe that there's when like you were just saying, when you are present in the moment and you are not expecting things to happen, you're not forcing anything to happen, you're just in this state of allowing. I mean, Mike, when we had Ron Moorhead on, he talked about this as well with Bigfoot. And I've had the same experience with Dogman, is just to be in that allowing state, being peaceful, being allowing, and all of a sudden I think allow this stuff to materialize around us. I think it's there. And I think, but it's this allowing that we begin to start to see what some of this is. Like, Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I had a similar experience when we were out about in Alberta. Is it 2 winters ago now? Yeah,
2
quite some
winters.
time.
Yeah, I know.
But I wasn't expecting anything. I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. We're out here doing this thing. We're walking around in the dark and all those kind of things. But there it was, something on the edge of the property, just out of the light, this amorphous, shadowy thing bouncing back and forth across the property line. And it wasn't something that I was thinking, I want to see that or any of that kind of thing. It was just, I was in this headspace of, I'm just here doing my thing, and that's exactly when it happened for me.
I literally thought we were on that side of Duffield to just pay respects to the soldiers there in the memorial. It wasn't a cemetery; it was just a memorial. And to your point, to both of your points, that was exactly it. And I guess that was when we're talking about intention. The intention was being open to whatever else. There was there was absolutely no preconceived idea of what we're going to see or that we wanted. And honestly, even though I'm surrounded by woods here, the idea of a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever was really not on my radar. That just didn't seem like that was something that we're doing. We were going to do it the next night. We're going to go and do that the next night. We weren't doing that. That was, in my little siloed world, that wasn't tonight. That was tomorrow, and to be able to be like, oh, look at that. Here we are. And you just don't know what you're going to see. That was a big, beautiful lesson for me in my journey, in this paranormal journey, because it really was like nothing is off the table any longer. Everything can happen. And it was such a great moment for me just to see and to be able to experience it with good friends, and that we all had this wonderful shared experience. Before
I let you continue with this story in night number 2, I want to touch on that feeling that you were getting from that tree, because very recently, and I mean recently as in like 4 days ago-ish, I was out at the place where we usually see Dogman here in Alberta, one of the hot spots and whatnot. I was actually bringing them some chicken for Christmas because I wanted to give them a Christmas gift, and I was out there, and one of the first sensations that came over me in this one spot was this intense electricity in the air. Like, it felt like the air was electric, like my hair was standing up, like almost. And for the audience, if you guys have ever taken a balloon and rubbed a balloon like crazy, and then you feel that balloon, it feels like this staticky electricity, but there's nothing in the air. Like, there's nothing going on. It's just this change in the environment, and it's the most interesting sensation, but it's very definable. And what I've found is that if I've got an EMF meter out there, electromagnetic meter, that will start to actually fluctuate. So there's some sort of electromagnetic thing that's happening in the area. And Mike, we saw it when we went out to shoot that documentary as well. We started to see that meter start to pay, and Mike started feeling ill. This was the same area, by the way. He was starting to feel sick. Like, so there's some sort of magnetic thing that's going on around this phenomenon. But Greg, I want to let you continue because this just gets more interesting.
It does. And, some of the stuff that you're talking about, you're going to hear in my second part of the story that you just talked about. And, what that makes me feel, it validates for me a couple things. Number one, that I think there's a pattern that we don't always associate to these sightings and whatnot. Not that we should expect certain things in certain orders, but it's like there is something really, there's a kind of a camaraderie, I think, between all of us to be able to be like, yep, I felt that energy. Yep, I've had this. It's very similar, maybe not exact. Hearing those parts of from both of you, it just is so nice to hear. Because, you just don't, what is what? You know what I mean? You just don't always know because it's so unique. But yet more people experience it than they think. The second night we went to a location in Indiana, and there is a gentleman by the name of Greg Yost who he is known through Denise and Ernie. He's a big Bigfoot researcher, but he is also very much of the idea that Bigfoot, mainly known as forest friends, forest people, that they are interdimensional entities. They are not animals. They are not, in fact, if you mention around these folks that Bigfoot's an animal, they're going to be very upset about it. And I've learned to respect that and understand that firsthand. So we went to this location, and how it was laid out is that there's a little campground area and trees are all around so that you can have your campfire and then you can go into the trees and do what you need to do. And in there, and as you talked about with Dogman, with the chicken, there's a gifting stump. And so the gifting stump then is a place to leave your tributes, to also make sure that they can have some good food, make sure that they are known that they're loved and respected. And I don't think you can underestimate and undersell the idea of love when it comes to these situations. And I know that there's going to be people out there, and that's just it. There's a lot of people out there like, love, what? Come on. It's huge in this intention. It's absolutely huge. And when we went in there, it was daylight. Greg showed us a tree that was pushed over that didn't crack, that it was bent at the base. And you could see that it was, and first of all, you're in a forest and only one tree is that way. You kind of wonder what that's about. And the leaves were still alive on it. It's just like, oh, that's really interesting. And so it starts to kind of to layer a story, I guess. So it's much later in the evening. We have a fire going. We have snacks at a picnic table, and the raccoons see the snacks and they're ripping it open. They're ripping open the bags of chips and stuff. So we're not really getting our snacks, and that's important a little bit later. But Greg's like, okay, now let's go into the forest. It's time. He literally would be like, it's time. And you're just like, okay, okay, let's do it, I guess. Yeah. And, it's just, and he looks like Sasquatch himself. He's about 6'6". He has a beard that goes down to his stomach. He has long hair in the back. It's like we always talk about like star seeds. Is there a version of, like a Bigfoot star seed, a hairy seed or something? I don't know. But, you know what I mean, though? Someone that's just I'm a direct descendant of this. And this is all, it's not an animal. It's this interdimensional situation. But so we go back into this area. Shar and her wife decide not to join us this time. They're out there, and they can. There's a little bit of a parking area, and they can see further the opposite direction of where we are. On that end of things, there is nobody around. But all of a sudden, Shar starts seeing a group of people just kind of out of nowhere start walking further down, and she we don't know about this till afterwards, but I'm with everyone else, and we're in the deep part of the forest. And what Greg Yost does is simply this: he calls out to his forest friends, and it's intention, and he has this way of doing it. And all of a sudden, you start seeing eye shine in the forest. And for those who don't know, eye shine is just it's slightly like how a cat's eye reflects, but it's not reflection. It's actually their eyes light up. And so we start seeing that, and we're seeing different colors. And he's talking to them, and it's just like, we can see you can hear stuff in the trees and stuff. And it's like, okay, here we are, this is happening. And I'm at the end of the line of all of us, because it's like a little path that just is like a line of us can kind of fit in. All of a sudden, I just feel on the back of my head, on the left-hand side, a hand, and it goes against the back of my head, and then it lifts away. And, being an investigator, the first thing I do is I just kind of look to see, did I back into a tree? Did I, even though I know what a hand feels like in the back of your head. And, also I know what it feels like, clearly, whatever the fingers are, the palm, you could feel like back here on the back of the head, but then the fingers are wrapping around the top of your head. You know that this is a big hand. Is like if you're watching like NBA players and they hold the ball kind of like this, and it's just like a little ball in this big hand. And my friend Brad standing next to me is like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, I think I was just touched. And Greg up the line is like, "What?" I said, "I think I was just touched by a Bigfoot." And he just kind of nods at me and he goes, "That means they like you." And
I love that.
And I'm like, well, that's good. That's great. But the thing is, that's a life-changing moment, because that wasn't expected, and it was phenomenal. I could tell you what that feels like even to this day, like that feel. And what luck to ever be in that situation where they just kind of appear and they touch and they disappear. I mean, it's not like you heard like something coming through the woods behind me. It just there and gone. And it was really, really incredible. After that, we were done. We're going to go away. All of a sudden, our friend Ernie, he all of a sudden just kind of flies backwards and hits the ground. And like, you okay? And he's just like, just let me catch my breath. Hold on, just relax. Just let me get myself together here. Something jolted him with electricity and pushed him back. And it took him down for about 2 to 3 minutes. And we don't think it was bad. We just think that something wanted to say hello and maybe didn't know its own strength, perhaps. I don't know. Because there was nothing throughout the night that gave that impression of that we're in danger. There was nothing that made that feel that way. And so we had this great experience. And I'm a big believer in ITC for paranormal intertransmental communication. So I'll use Spirit Box. I know not everyone likes Spirit Box, but I've had some amazing responses. So once we get back out to everywhere, Char tells us about those people that her and Kim had seen way off into the distance. And we're just like, we don't know what that is. It sounded like there was like another car that came by and the headlights kind of went on to these people. And then when it moved away, that they're gone. We kind of wonder now, could that have been forest people and not humans? Like not us. We don't know. It's very interesting. Whatever it was, it disappeared without a trace. But I'm in this area and we're by the campfire. Eyeshine is going crazy. We're seeing some elementals. I firmly believe that elementals are kind of like the first wave before we get any sort of Bigfoot activity. Like they're the troops of kind of like, yeah, this is good. You can come on out. That's just my theory. But I have Spirit Box going. And maybe about 20 feet from me in the woods, there's some eyeshine. And I'm just like, Sue Spirit Box, I'm hoping to communicate with you and all this stuff. And I was compelled, and I don't know why. I was compelled to say, I love you. And through the Spirit Box, the response was, I love you. And it was incredible. And then the eyeshine disappeared. And I'm like, well, you left me. You disappeared. And then it reappears about 5 feet in front of me. And that was, I have to admit, that was like, whoa, okay. That's a little close. Incredible.
And I know what you mean about that eye shine, because every encounter that I've ever had with Dogman, that's usually how it starts, is you see these, and you're exactly right. It's an actual glow. There's not a shimmer like a big cat or something like that, and it's this actual glow, and it's so validating and it's so impactful, and I've had it as well where I've seen one show up, and there's been no footsteps, like there's nothing, and then it's like it just seems to show up. But I've also had it where there's been no eye shine and I could hear them. And the last time when I was out offering the chicken for Christmas, I could hear them, but I couldn't see the eye shine at all. But you could distinctly hear 2 feet coming through the woods and whatnot. It was really cool. This is such a unique experience, though, Greg, that you've had, in the sense that there seemed to be there was trust, there was something there that this entity was, felt comfortable enough to connect with you. Do you think that they're looking for this connection? Like, they're out there hoping that this is the connection that they're going to get?
I think that's really interesting, and I think there is something to be said about that. I think especially, I'm sure you could agree in your experiences that there's a lot of leeriness on their end, but I think for me, why I was so lucky to be able to have any of these experiences would be through people like Denise and Ernie and Greg Yost, because it's already been established with them, this connection. And I think that it's an interesting thing how just if we're all people, and I don't know Mike all that well, but I know you, Morgan, and Morgan is just like, well, Mike is great. And it's like that, and I feel like that's kind of what happened here with the Bigfoot. Is maybe they didn't say Greg is great, but they certainly were like, oh, the people that Denise, Ernie, and Greg have brought along, they're okay. They're okay by us. So we're going to be okay to just pop in, say hi, and move in. I think a big part of it too is like, we weren't doing this to try to exploit anything. We didn't have any recording devices. We didn't have any flashlights looking for them. It was all, and that's, I think that's the key to it is, if you want to document it, remember it. Because I think there's a great reason why shows like Finding Bigfoot isn't Finding Bigfoot, because I think that they're going off of a different premise that doesn't match how you can actually have these encounters.
I couldn't agree more. That's the one thing. We had a good friend of ours come out this past spring, and we all went to this area where we've seen some pretty weird stuff, including Dogman and Sasquatch included, but we've seen some pretty weird stuff. And that was the one thing that I told Jason, was that I said, if you want to see them, you can't be filming. It's just not. It doesn't work. They will not come. Filming and weapons, even to protect yourself. Like, if you're thinking, oh, I'll just take some bear spray, you're almost guaranteed that it's not going to happen. I had a really interesting workshop out there. This was a few years ago when I was still doing the workshops out there, and literally every group that we brought out, we were able to teach them about this stuff, and we came at it from that angle, that we were teaching how these beings are, and to love and respect these things. And anyway, the one night we went out and there was zero activity. Like, there was nothing. It was like they weren't around. You couldn't hear anything. It was just nothing. And I thought, this is odd, because like these guys, these dogmen, they had not missed a night that we'd been out there, not one. And I was like, that's really, really strange. Anyway, long story short, the guys, this group leaves, and one of the guys that we learned later had a great big hunting knife in his pants. And we didn't know. We had no idea, but they knew. And I was like, that's it. So anyway, that night after the workshop, I actually went out to the woods and apologized to them. And I said, look, we had no clue. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. We did not know that this guy was, and I don't think he was doing it because he wanted to hurt them, but I think he was out there because he knew we were going to be in the woods. But I mean, they don't know that. So again, it comes back to that intention thing that we were talking about. It's just, it is so important. And it's like, if you're in that allowing state, you're not going to be packing,
Yeah.
I think it's also interesting based on that I could imagine people are like, well, how do they know that they have a knife and whatever else? And I think that's a very big human problem by thinking that, thinking about these things in human ways, like, they don't have a radar, they can't see if they have a knife or not. They know stuff, they see stuff. They're in a different dimension. The way that they exist is on a different plane than how we do. So I think you're absolutely right that you have to. You have to. They're going to see if you're not completely, on the up and up, so to speak.
I had an interesting incident the last time that I was out there, because the area that we go out to is very, very rural, and there's a lot of people that, they're farmers, they've got guns, they've got, it's pretty rural out there. Like, you have to be careful. And the way that this last encounter ended, which I was really sad about, because I didn't really get to have the interaction that I really wanted to have with them. But we were, you could feel the energy. I could hear them in the woods. I put the chicken down and whatnot, and somebody in one of the neighboring properties let a gun off. And now, what was interesting about this was that about 5 minutes before that gun went off, the energy disappeared. It was gone. It was like the feeling, like the eye shine disappeared, the footsteps disappeared. Like, they were long gone before that gun went off. And I knew something wasn't right, because I was like, they don't just, up and ditch. Usually it's a bit of a task for them to move on. Like, they enjoy this. And I was like, okay, that's really, really interesting. And I don't necessarily think it has to do with even them, for example, maybe being interdimensional or anything like that. I think when you are really, really, really in tune and in the moment, and which animals are, and I think they have that core animal about them. They know. Like, if you come into a house, and Mike and I, we're both huge animal lover people.
Yeah.
And when you come into a house, whether it be with a cat or a dog or, in my case, a snake, whatever, it's like you come in, and if you're the type of person that's, energetically carrying a weapon, even if it's not a physical weapon, they bloody well know. There's a mental energy about having a weapon that comes with having a weapon, and I think that is what these guys are picking up on. It's like there's something off about what you're bringing to the table.
Even Rupert Sheldrake wrote about this kind of thing, animals that are aware that their owners are coming home before they actually get there. So something that is more attuned to perhaps looking for something that may or may not be threatening would be less willing to be around in that case.
Very much so. I would agree. And it's also like, you're right about pets knowing when you're going to get home. Same with like pets knowing when it's going to rain. And it's like, it is, so 100%. And imagine, I could only imagine too that, someone like Bigfoot, their senses are much more enhanced than my cat Linus. I think, it's like if Linus can figure stuff out, from a small level, just imagine what their senses will do and can do.
Oh, totally. Well, this story didn't stop there. You went again to both, was it Wisconsin and Minnesota, and reached out again. So what happened there? Because like this story just continues on.
I'm a firm believer in the discussion of proximity, especially when it comes to spirit. But what about when it comes to Bigfoot? Greg had said that he can go anywhere in the United States and he can call his friends and that they can come out. And it's going to be the same ones that he might see in Indiana that he's going to go over to Wisconsin and that they're going to be able to show up because it's portals, it's interdimensional, all that sort of thing. And so maybe not as grand per se as these incidents. I was over in Wabasha for a paranormal event in Wabasha, Minnesota. The Mississippi River is right there, and on the other side of the Mississippi River is Wisconsin. So we're doing an event there, and it was around 3, 4 in the morning, and we just take a walk from the hotel to the river just because a few of us just wanted to get out. And a friend of mine who was with, he's like, why don't you try some of that Sasquatch calling that you talked about that Greg guy did in Kentucky and Indiana? I'm like, maybe, I don't know. I mean, we can try. So we prepped everybody about intention. We just kind of got kind of ready for whatever. And so I start kind of the way that Greg did, kind of not as loud, because Greg was really loud about it, but I was just like, this is what we're here for. This is our intention. This is why we're here. We want to talk with you, and we want to just have any sort of communication. Now, what was really interesting about that moment, and I also had some recordings of what we believe were sounds that they make, and I wanted to play that as well. So I was playing that, and coincidences are kind of weird, because people say there's no such thing as them. Others will say, well, you're at the Mississippi River, so fish is going to come out of water and stuff like that. But the moment I did that, a big fish comes out of the water, and almost like a whale, and just not size of the whale, but just like the shape that was coming out, the trajectory and stuff, and it just lands on its stomach in there, and it just really took us all off guard. And at that point, we started hearing knocking from across the river in the Wisconsin side, because it's all woods over there. And we were just like, wow, and we started hearing some grunting and stuff over there as well, and it was really just like, I don't know what that was. That's just incredible that we were getting that. But then I'm going to jump to a few weeks back. My friend Shar and I, we went to a forest-like place out of the Twin Cities here, and we were walking through, and it was, I know your mind plays tricks on you when you're going into dark forest areas, but something felt kind of off. And so we go in there and we get to the area, because she's been there before and she's heard this guttural yell. So we went to where she was. Well, it was actually, the whole thing was pretty creepy, and we didn't go exactly where she was, because we stopped about 3/4 of the way in, and she goes, it gets creepy from here. And I'm like, it gets creepy. It's been creepy since the moment we walked into this place. So, me being heroic as I am, I'm just like, why don't we just stop here for a while? And down the path, dark and light and whatever, Shar sees something cross that area, because it's a path, but you can see light. She sees something cross the area, and she's just like, it took 2 steps for it to get across. It's not like someone walking and it maybe takes 4 or 5 or whatever. She's like, it took 2 steps. And things started to move around that we weren't quite sure what it was. And we hear a branch snap. And it's not, a branch snapping if, say it's a small twig and a squirrel does something, whatever. I go in there and I'm like, yeah, I want to see this. But I guess I really didn't, because I'm just like, are we done? And she's like, yeah. And so we walk back. We're kind of moving quickly, because it feels like something is following us and watching us. It's not the same energy that we've experienced at these other places, right? This is different. She's a psychic medium. She stops, and she just turns around and she looks. And I'm just like, oh, I don't want to turn around and look. I don't know I'm not sure what I want to see. And I turn around, and there's nothing there. But there's a really great breath of moonlight that's coming across the trail, and it's landing on this tree with a big trunk, and it's fully illuminated. And all of a sudden, we're watching that tree, and a shadow passes in front of it. And so if I'm telling you that we're out there looking for Sasquatch, you're going to be like, well, it's a Sasquatch, a shadow, right? It was a humanoid body with a long neck and an egg-shaped head that passes right in front of it. And first of all, for it to make a shadow, we would have had to see it. We would have had to see what made that shadow, and we didn't see anything. We only saw the shadow. And we're just like, we got to get the F out of here. We turn around, and as we're walking rather briskly to get back to where the car is, I'm thinking to myself, because we're on paths, we have to go, and it goes straight for a while, then eventually turns and curves and whatever to get back to where we are. I'm thinking the trajectory of that shadow is going to exactly to where it's going to meet us at the entrance. And Shar was thinking the same thing. To my knowledge, nothing was there for us. Whatever that was, I have my theories. That was a game changer, because that's something very different, and I think it plays into my belief of energies of whatever your intention is. You can bring forth spirit, you can bring forth your Bigfoot, dogman, whatever, or aliens. That's where I come in with that.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about this so much on the show, is that there's so much within sort of those outer frequencies that we don't see. And, it's not just something where we're we're going to a physical spot to experience a physical thing. I think it's, again, comes back to the idea that once you kind of tap into that outer consciousness and inner consciousness, that stuff starts to appear. Like, and I don't think it's because, we're out there, trying to make something happen or to conjure something up or anything like that. I think this stuff is there. And I think the ability to kind of just, once you're tuned in, once you're in that state, once you've got those intentions, once you're kind of willing to see a little bit deeper, then this stuff starts to kind of materialize on its own. And there's people out there that have lectured on this before, and they've said it, it's like a form of open contact, right? Like you follow you follow this intention and these steps and whatnot, and eventually something will come out and say, oh, hey, you seem like you're doing the right things, and I'd like to introduce myself.
Sure.
So that, that seems to be it. I just want to quickly let you guys know at 55, in about 4 minutes, my phone might go off and make a horrible beeping noise because apparently there's an emergency alert today, and I will shut it off as quickly as possible, Mike, so I apologize.
Okay, no problem.
It's the province. It's the province. Anyway, Greg, continue what you were going to say.
And I also believe, because I've been doing my own personal sort of research into can we bring forth aliens and stuff? And I've had some interesting experiences that I believe once you, and I suppose it'd be the same with any sort of Bigfoot or anything else. I feel like it's a little bit different with aliens. Is once you establish that contact, once they find that they're going to visit you or whatever it is, I think you're on the list. It's not like, oh, I'm okay, that was one and done. That now they are around, they are with you. I don't necessarily think the forest friends, the forest people are with me. I think though, the alien stuff and that shadow in that forest, because that wasn't my first time trying to reach out to them and seeing stuff that I can't explain. I do feel like that there is something to that theory that I have.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I mean, I've never had any UFO encounters or anything like that. My first cryptid type encounter was with Dogman. Since it's been Bigfoot, because they're really prolific in that area as well. We get lots of whistles and wood knocks and yells and all sorts of stuff like that. And they usually sort of pre-warn, because Dogman seems to be about the apex predator here. So usually, sometimes before they come, you hear the whoops and the whatnot, and the animals go nuts in the area, because they're like, this, the apex predators showed up, so we gotta everybody shut up. But it's so interesting how you look back in the different cultures and traditions and things like that, and it's right there. I mean, all of this stuff is right there. In Canada, I was telling this to a friend of mine online recently, because he said, well, I'm not seeing this connection for Dogman, that connection for Dogman. And I said, honestly, you go into Canadian lore and Canadian, legends, and it's everywhere. The first settlers here were told about them by the Indigenous as a tribe. They were told they were our trading partners. So don't bug them, don't bother them. And so they were impacted by, colonialism and things like that as well. Exactly. So you've got this deep history that's there, and everybody's just like, well, we don't know what it is. And it's like, well, if you read, you're going to, the information's there.
The idea that something like that can't exist because it isn't logical. And, it's one of the things that's very frustrating for me when people are just like, oh, it's impossible for aliens. It's possible for, Sasquatch being anything other than an animal, because it's like, it's, and everyone has the right to believe what they want to believe. That's totally fine. And I'm not here to convert anyone or anything else, but it's just like, just imagine if it doesn't make sense to you, that it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And the history of the earth is taking stuff that doesn't make sense and showing that it can make sense. And that's what science is, and that's what just evolution is. And I hope there's a point that more people start to understand. And I also understand too that there's a fear factor. There is a fear factor to all this, and that's not unreasonable. I mean, I've said in my stories myself, there's a couple times that I'm just like, what am I doing here? What did I get myself into? Are we going to be all right? But at the same time, it's like, This is what I signed up for. This is what I wanted to experience. And that's the other side to intention.
Yep.
Is careful for what you put out for your intention, because it's going to happen if you're able to really make intention work. That you don't waste anyone's time, including Sasquatches or aliens or anything else, because suddenly you're like, whoa, I didn't realize this was really going to happen. Then don't do it.
Yeah, I remember the first time I actually saw one of the dogmen, and it was after a good number of weekends of consistently going out and just having different types of encounters with them. And I remember the first time I saw the one that we connect with more frequently stand up on two legs, because you can't miss them when they're that tall, and we made eye contact, and his, of course, those bright glowing diamond eyes, right, just staring, and he very slowly, while he was making eye contact, began to walk closer, and it was like no surprises, right? It was what he was. What's the impression that I got was like just no surprises, like I'm coming over, and I was just like, okay, I've set that intention, and I've invited them. Be a good hostess, and I stepped forward a couple of steps, and I said, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And I mean, my heart's racing, because I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be face to face with him in probably a matter of about a minute. And then, of course, as many people who have heard the story knows, there was a dog on the other property that barked, and he looked over and was just bolted, but a lot of them bolted. But he was on his way over, and I was like, okay, I have to be a good custodian of this trust, because that's not happening to everybody. And it's like, if you're not a good custodian of that, then what are you doing? And I think that's really what this comes back to. This whole conversation comes back to is how are we being a custodian of what we want to experience? What are we bringing to the table, and what is the intention that we have? What are we going to do with it once it happens? That was actually today. Just going off on a slight bit of a tangent, I actually turned down a TV show this morning, for exactly the reason we're talking about here, which was wrong intention. Not only wrong information, but be a custodian of the information that you've been given a gift. What are you going to do with it? And it was one of the reasons this morning why I told them no, because I said that's not what we're supposed to do with this information.
And I was there too. We back when the shows were still being produced in the States, and we had been in a process with the Travel Channel with a production company here called Tremendous for about almost a year. And then when it got down to it, they're just like, you guys aren't scary enough. Can you be scarier? Can we work on more evil? And it was just like, that was kind of, it's a sad moment, because you work so hard, as you both know, when you like, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do this stuff, being on television and being able to share your experiences and stuff. And then it shows that none of that means anything to them. None of that hard work and that trust that you've created with your fan base, your listeners, whatever else, that, it's like, oh yeah, but just be scarier, or just lie about it. Just, here's a script. Why don't you talk about it? And, at the end, I just had to be like, I guess you'll have to find someone scarier. Sorry.
Yeah, it's hurtful, especially when you've worked so long in this field, and you build up that trust, and it just comes down to integrity and intention for yourself, I think, and it's so important in all of our work. So Greg, thank you so much for coming to talk about this today, because this has been so great, and I hope you'll come back so we can continue this discussion, because I think it needs to be had, and I think the more we put it out there, I think the better it is for our own sets of intentions. So
we need to talk aliens.
Okay, that's the next one then. That's what we're doing. Let's come back and talk aliens, because I would love that. So absolutely. This has been great. Thank you so much, and tell everybody your show where people can hear you. It's a fantastic show. It's so interesting, guys. I was on it as I was saying at the beginning. Where can they find you?
So I do a nightly radio show on AM 950 called Ghostbox Radio, and it's podcasted so that you can listen to it on Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, everywhere you get podcasts. And it's all about paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, as Morgan said. She's been on it. It was fantastic. I was buzzing after that episode because it was such a great conversation. I'm hoping to persuade Mike to join me on an episode. And also, Morgan, I think when we're talking about Dogman, I'd love just to have an episode devoted to those experiences that you've
Absolutely.
had. So you can stream us live if you want to. I'm on Facebook on Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakun. On Facebook, we stream live. Also on am950radio.com, we stream live. But like I said, we also do the podcast as well.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everybody for coming and joining and listening to this. And I hope it's been thought-provoking for everybody. So the next time you're out there and you're sitting alone in the woods, well, maybe you're not so alone. And it could be a really good thing. So...
And of course, another great conversation here on our show. I just love the people that we talk to. It's funny, as we're talking to people, it's just like, oh, I gotta find this person on Facebook and add them as a friend because they're so cool.
They are so cool, and I loved this conversation. It was such a great continuation of some of the other shows that I've done with him, and it's so fitting for the holidays because here it's all supposed to be about connecting with each other, connecting with nature, reconnecting with ourselves. And I mean, this is such a great example of how much that connection can really mean.
It's interesting how these things are all sort of, the interplay between them all is really fascinating. I was reading some Sasquatch stuff the other day, and there are people who really, really don't like the way you and I talk about Sasquatch. They didn't mention us, but they mention these people who think that it's an interdimensional or something different or related to UFOs. I don't get it. And it's like, well, you know, we're not saying it is for sure, but what we're saying is we're just open to some ideas because I dare say no one can really figure out what it is.
Yeah, and I think at this point, we have to begin to start incorporating things like quantum science and new advancements in thinking in understanding our world. I think at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. And I mean, whether people agree with that particular categorization or not, I think what it all comes back to, regardless of what they are, is that just like Greg had said, these are beings. These have intelligence. These are beings. These are something to connect with. So, I mean, again, like, you know, we mentioned this in the show, people like to label stuff, and the label really doesn't matter at the end of the day. All that matters is that you've got a being here. How do you choose to bring your energy to the space to interact with it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have been down the Sasquatch Bigfoot rabbit hole very, very much recently. I'm not sure why I'm being pulled back into it, but I love to think about it. I mean, I've been re-looking at the Patterson Gimlin film again and thinking, well, you know, all the debunking and that kind of stuff that has gone on over the years, if you really, really look at that film, there has never been a costume that good ever since. And this was 1968, you know?
Yeah, I mean, people need to think back to Planet of the Apes, right?
Yeah.
You know, and the amount of studio money that went into making Planet of the Apes and those costumes, and they were not that good.
No.
Like, I mean, they were good for their time. I mean, they were amazing for their time, but
that was the time. That was exactly the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think we're at the point now, and I don't think AI is going to help with this, is the fact that now every piece of evidence that comes out isn't going to be enough. And I think we've hit that point now with photographs and videos and things like it's just not. So I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, the argument for whether or not it exists is going to be up, I think, to the individual to have their own encounters and to build that relationship with what's out there or not. And it's going to come back to that individual pursuing their own journey through this, because I don't think there's going to be one thing that's going to affect the masses where everybody's like, oh my God, okay, that's it.
So in the early days of the internet, we had people just yelling, Photoshopped, Photoshopped, and now it's AI. If you write a cogent argument for or against something that's more than 3 paragraphs long on Reddit, now people accuse you of using ChatGPT. It's, it's like, no, I wrote this myself because, it's what I do for a living. But but it's really fascinating. AI has become the new, the Scream. AI has become the new Photoshopped. It's really, really fascinating.
It's wild, and it's crazy how I think this stuff can get in the way of just bringing it back to what we were talking about, which is connection. It can enhance what you're doing or not. And I think we can turn around and we need to start understanding personal experience and relationship again. And I think that's going to have to be put on a very high priority list in order for us to move forward with this stuff that's coming out, this new technology and whatever that's coming out. I think we're at this point now where, making that time to connect, whether it be with loved ones over the holidays or, whether you're out like we are in the woods connecting with some other things, whatever that is for you, I think that priority needs to be set, and it needs to be set higher, because we're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see a lot more of this. Well, you faked it. You've done this. You've done that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like you mentioned, how people are so focused on whether or not this thing is quote unquote real or whatever it is, that they're not really paying attention to the spiritual message that's there. It's really fascinating how we get focused on the material and really tend to ignore the underside of things, the reasons behind them, or what's actually there for us to learn. It's silly.
It is silly, and that loss of, like you're saying, that loss of connection, that loss of the bigger message in place of an argument is frustrating, because that's, I think, very reflective, in the microcosm of the holiday dinner table, right? I mean, You're sitting at the dinner table, and instead of realizing, wow, I've got my family here, I can just let everybody be as they are, you've got people that are fighting and griping and arguing about something that they've missed the point of why they're there. And that's what I really loved about what Greg had to say with this, where it's like, he's not concerned with, okay, I got to prove the fact that this happened. It's about, what did I experience here? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for my experience of the world? I think that is it's a lost art. And
that is why I love having these conversations that we do. It's 100% why.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it grounds us. It really grounds us.
Yeah. It grounds us in, well, I don't know about grounding. I don't feel like it grounds me. It just makes me think even more sort of out there in a way. So I guess it grounds us in outer space.
It grounds us in outer space. Well, I think for me, it feels like it reroots me in the fact that there is nothing that's impossible.
There you go. Yeah.
That for me, and to me, that's what grounding is. It reminds me that, well, wait a minute, there's all of these infinite possibilities when I can look back at spirituality in that way, and it reconnects me with that. And so for me, grounding is all about remembering that bigger picture. Yeah. And that's super magical to me.
So I'm looking forward to a Christmas episode that's coming up next week.
How exciting.
That's coming up in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. I'm telling you,
Yes.
it's creeping up fast, but it's such a good one, and I'm so excited to be able to share it with everybody.
Me too. Thank you for joining us on this eerie expedition, dear listeners.
And remember, there is no line between the natural and the supernatural. All is consciousness. Until next time, happy holidays and stay curious, friends.
Ho, ho, and ho.
Yes.
Supernatural Circumstances is a co-production of Entity Seeker Paranormal Research and Teachings and Good Egg Studios. This podcast is part of the Curious Cast podcast network. Theme music by Corey Johnson of Catalyst Records in Edmonton, Alberta. You can learn more about Morgan Knudsen at entityseeker.ca and learn more about me, Mike Browne, and listen to my show, Dark Poutine, at darkpoutine.com. Feel free to email the show at supernaturalcircumstances@gmail.com.